Hey guys, tonight we're taking a very long, very sparkly walk through the Mughal Empire. Not just any part, but the bit with the most bedazzled furniture in human history. The legendary Peacock throne. Picture this, you're not standing. You're gliding barefoot across cool marble floors, the air thick with rosewater and power. You move past heavy velvet drapes, past guards with curved swords that glint like shark teeth, and into a throne room that smells like sandalwood old money and maybe a bit of drama. Above you, golden domes glitter. Below, the polished floor reflects everything except your growing suspicion that you're wildly underdressed for this adventure. You spot at the Peacock throne. It doesn't just sit there, it radiates. A shimmering peacock feather-shaped supernova of gold, emeralds, rubies, and diamonds that could bankrupt half of Europe. And here's the kicker, Shah Jahan, the Mughal emperor who ordered this beauty, built it after the Taj Mahal. That's right, this was his follow-up project. Like baking the world's best cake, then casually deciding to build a cathedral made of frosting. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop your city and local time in the comments. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You take your first few dreamy steps through the Mughal court. The year around 1635, the Emperor Shah Jahan, whose name literally means King of the World. Humble right. He's at the height of his power, ruling from his capital in Delhi. The empire is vast, sophisticated, and honestly pretty sparkly. The man's aesthetic is over-the-top meets I can and I will. Historians estimate the original Peacock throne cost over 4 times what the Taj Mahal did. 4 times. And no, this wasn't just a fancy seat. It was a message of solid gold middle finger to any ruler who thought they were impressive. Crafted over 7 years, it was said to feature more than 2,500 pounds of gold and over 26,000 gemstones, including a few giant diamonds, that made European monarchs cry in their goblets. You shuffle past scribes in the court scratching away with peacock quill pens. They're recording royal decrees, bad poetry about mangoes, and maybe a sneaky complaint about the peacock feathers being too much. Because yes, even back then, someone was probably like, maybe tone it down a bit, but Shah Jahan didn't do minimalism. His throne was shaped like 2 peacocks fanned out behind the emperor, like a divine aura, their bodies encrusted with rubies and sapphires. Imagine if a bird married a disco ball and then became king. That's the vibe. Now here's a fun fringe theory. Some believe the throne wasn't just art, but a cosmic diagram, a sort of astrological power grid, designed to place Shah Jahan at the literal center of the universe. Others argue this is just a fancy way of saying, look how rich I am. Historians still argue whether the symbolism was intended, or if it was just high-end bling for a man with an empire-sized ego. As you approach guards in long embroidered coats, nod solemnly, their curved swords catching the candlelight. Musicians play soft sitar tunes while incense coils upward like lazy snakes. It's oddly calming. But you can't help but notice the irony, a throne that screams permanence, power, and divine right. Yet its creator will spend the final years of his life imprisoned by his own son. That's right, Shah Jahan, the same man who ordered the throne, and the Taj Mahal gets locked away in a tower with a view of his dead wife's tomb. And that tower? No throne. No gold. Just long, long hours to think about legacy betrayal, and maybe whether those emeralds were a bit much after all. You ease down onto a nearby cushion, not the throne itself. You're not that bold and watch the court swirl around you. Courtiers whisper behind silk fans. Astrologers mutter about lucky days. An elephant somewhere outside lets out a disgruntled trumpet. Like it too knows how exhausting empire can be. You take a breath. The air is thick with stories and you're only just beginning. You're still seated on that embroidered cushion taking in the view, but your gaze keeps drifting back to the throne, the throne. It doesn't just sparkle, it twinkles as if each gemstone has its own smug little personality. You're not alone in staring. Everyone in this court is side-eyeing that throne because it isn't just furniture, it's a declaration. A massive, over-the-top, shimmering declaration that Shah Jahan is more divine than you, more powerful than you, and definitely better at shopping. Let's break it down. The throne sits on 6 solid gold legs, each shaped like a lion paw. Subtle? And above it rises a golden canopy held aloft by 12 twisting columns. The whole thing is carved with images of gods, flowers, and birds, all inlaid with jewels. The peacocks fan out behind the throne like an enormous set of wings, as if the emperor might just take flight at any moment, preferably over his enemies' burning castles. But here's where things get weird. There's a Persian diamond in the middle of the throne, enormous like should this be legal levels of big. Some say it's the legendary Koh-i-Noor, while others claim that one showed up later. Historians still argue whether the original throne even contained the Koh-i-Noor at all, or if that's just colonial fan fiction. Either way, there were enough diamonds on this thing to cause a traffic jam in heaven. You move closer. Your toes graze the edge of the marble dais and you squint at one of the inlaid rubies. It's as big as your thumb and glows like it has secrets. A courtier nearby whispers that the rubies were said to bleed if the emperor was betrayed. Sure, that sounds fake, but this is the 1600s and everything has a spooky origin story, including chairs. Now comes the fun part. People didn't just admire the throne, they feared it. Some said it was cursed. Not in the jump scare horror movie way, but in the everyone who touches it loses everything eventually kind of way. You start counting Shah Jahan imprisoned. His son Aurangzeb rules like a tyrant, dies alone. Nader Shah steals it and then gets assassinated. Coincidence? Probably. But curses are good PR, and the Peacock throne had plenty of that. It's important to understand how central this throne was to Mughal power. It wasn't just the emperor's seat, it was the axis of the empire. Foreign dignitaries would be forced to stand in its shadow necks, craned, blinking against the glare of 1,000 jewels. It sent a clear message: you don't negotiate with Shah Jahan. You marvel at him. You imagine standing before the emperor now. He's perched on the throne in full regalia turban, heavy with pearls, robes embroidered with gold, thread beard combed to philosophical perfection. His gaze is distant but not unfocused. He sees everything: your clothes, your posture, the way your left eyebrow twitches when you're nervous. It's intimidating. You shift uncomfortably on your cushion as if he can read your 21st century Wi-Fi password. Then there's the court gossip. Always juicy, always dangerous. One fringe tale says the throne had a hidden compartment containing a book of prophecies, only to be opened during times of crisis. Another claims it had a tiny, jewel-encrusted music box that played battle hymns. Totally unverified, obviously, but historians still get into academic slap fights about this stuff. You chuckle to yourself. The idea of scholarly adults arguing about a magic chair is both hilarious and somehow very human. You glance at the walls. Murals shimmer in the candlelight, each depicting scenes of past emperors, mythical beasts, and floral patterns that spiral into infinity. It's a visual echo of the throne itself, ornate, overwhelming, and designed to stun you into silence. Even the ceiling seems to lean down like it's trying to hear your thoughts. But then oddly, you start to feel something else. Not awe, not fear. Something gentler. It's admiration. The throne is a work of impossible artistry. It required hundreds of artisans, years of labor, and levels of coordination that make modern event planning look like cave drawings. You can almost hear their hammers and chisels, their muttered curses and quiet pride. This wasn't just built, it was birthed. Painfully, expensively, magnificently. And let's not ignore the political undertones. Shah Jahan had a message for his enemies, both inside and outside the empire. Don't even think about it. This was a throne that could bankrupt you just by existing. It didn't need guards. The sheer weight of its value, literal and symbolic, was protection enough. Still, even here in this golden moment of Mughal glory, you can sense the clock ticking. Empires don't last. Thrones get stolen, melted, forgotten. You blink slowly, watching a servant quietly polish a golden stair. He does it like a prayer, a ritual. Maybe he knows what's coming. The air is thick with incense now. Saffron myrrh, something floral you can't name. You let your eyes close for just a second. The throne remains in your vision, glowing behind your lids like a dream you're not quite ready to wake from. You wake not jarringly, just enough to realize your eyelids had given in. A faint hum of music still floats across the court. You stretch your legs and let your gaze wander past the throne toward a group of men, hunched over a slab of stone. No, not men artists. The throne didn't appear fully formed out of divine gold fog. It was carved, inlaid, hammered, and cursed probably by real people, most of whom had no choice in the matter. You shuffle closer. They don't see you, of course not. This is all a dream or a memory or something more poetic than either. One man chips away at a gemstone setting, whispering measurements under his breath. Another rubs a cloth over a golden dragon tail, his fingers cracked, stained reverent. There's a young boy holding a tray of tools, his eyes tired, but locked onto the master artisan with something like hope. You hear one of them mutter in Persian, then laugh, pointing at a particularly extravagant ruby. He wanted 7 of these. On one leg. What does he think we are, wizards? The others chuckle quietly, carefully. One looks around, then goes back to carving lips sealed. There's something deeply human here. The throne may be divine, but the labor behind it is not. It's sweaty, stubborn, and often thankless. These craftsmen worked for years, many of them under imperial decree, which is a nice way of saying you can't say no. Some came willingly, drawn by honor or the challenge. Others were recruited from conquered territories, their skills conscripted like soldiers of artistry. A man with streaks of gray in his beard polishes the leg of the throne. You watch him pause just briefly to flex his swollen knuckles. That motion, a quiet, involuntary ache, is more powerful than the gemstones he's polishing. Historians love names like Austin de Bordeaux, the European jeweler, said to have contributed designs, but most of the workers remain anonymous. Nameless fingers left priceless beauty behind, and no one remembers the hands that bled to build it. That golden peacock. Every feather individually cast, carved, and inlaid. 1,000 little scales of enamel and precious stone. There are floral patterns that blossom across the throne's base, so intricate you'd swear they were silk embroidery instead of stone. One section has the Persian phrase, "If there is a paradise on earth, it is this, it is this, it is this." Not subtle, not wrong. The throne was also meant to be seen in the sunlight, so the jewels would reflect light in dazzling patterns across the marble floor. Imagine that you arrive at court already nervous, and then a disco ball of royal smugness hits your eyeballs before the emperor even speaks. That's not just opulence, that's weaponized sparkle. You overhear a heated debate in a corner. 2 supervisors are arguing about the placement of a sapphire. One says it belongs on the canopy. The other insists it goes near the emperor's elbow to reflect the morning light just right. Historians still argue whether the layout followed symbolic geometry or just Shah Jahan's whims that day. Either way, the artists complied because you don't argue with the guy funding your entire village's rice supply. There's a darker side, too. Some of these gemstones were war plunder taken from vanquished kings, rival sultans' temples. Gold that once decorated sacred idols now curves into lion claws and phoenix wings. You run your fingers lightly along a carved column. Cool, smooth, stolen. Power leaves fingerprints, and this throne has smudges in every corner. Another craftsman mutters about his eyesight ruined from years of peering at microscopic detail. I used to see stars, he says now. I only see dots. It sounds like poetry, but it's just old eyes and long days. His apprentice nods solemnly, already half blind himself. They keep working. Some modern scholars speculate that elements of the throne were inspired by Hindu iconography, combined with Persian motifs and Central Asian techniques. It was a collision of cultures fused under imperial force and wrapped in gold leaf. The throne became a mirror of the empire layered, complicated, a little chaotic, but undeniably beautiful. You watch one artisan gently blow dust from a dragon's face. Another runs his hand over the inlaid lapis lazuli, murmuring a prayer. There's love here. Even amid the politics, the pressure, and the cracked fingernails, there's pride. The kind of pride that outlives pain. And then a moment of levity. One artist paints a tiny bird in the corner of the base, a bird wearing a ridiculous, oversized turban. His neighbor laughs and the painter shrugs. If we're going blind, he says, might as well go with a joke. You smile. The Emperor will never see it. Or maybe he will. Maybe he'll smile too, just a little. Unlikely, but fun to imagine. You sit back on your heels, the murmurs of the workshop fading into the scent of stone dust and warm metal. You realize you've walked not just into a throne room, but into a memory of creation. A place where beauty and power were carved from sweat and stubbornness. The throne may be priceless, but this labor. This was the real treasure. You leave the workshop behind, footsteps echoing faintly as you drift back into the main court, where the throne looms like a sun. But now that you've seen how it was made by tired hands and sharp tools, it feels different. Still magnificent, still utterly absurd, but also deeply human. You're not the only one staring. The court is teeming today. Nobles and officials crowd the hall like sequined chess pieces, all positioned just so. Some lean forward, slightly respectful, attentive. Others try to look casual, like they accidentally wandered into the most powerful room in the empire. Welcome to the world of Mughal courtly etiquette. You're about to witness a dance more choreographed than any ballet, where the wrong word or twitch of a brow can get you publicly shamed, or worse, reassigned to paperwork in the Deccan. Everyone's talking, but softly. It's a buzz like 1,000 bees arguing over their inheritance. You hear praises flung around like rose petals. His Majesty shines brighter than the dawn. The Emperor's wisdom is deeper than the Yamuna. His sneeze is more melodious than a nightingale's cry. Okay, you made that last one up, but honestly, it's not far off. Poets are a big deal here. One in a gold-trimmed robe and ego to match steps forward to recite a new ghazal composed in the Emperor's honor. His voice is rich and dreamy, and the metaphors... Whoa! You're pretty sure he just compared Shah Jahan's justice to a lion playing the flute. Everyone claps like it's the deepest thing ever. You cough into your sleeve to hide a smirk. But here's the thing. None of this is empty flattery. Or, okay, maybe some of it is. But this is how power worked. This elaborate theater, every compliment bow and dramatic robe swish, was designed to maintain the Emperor's image as divinely chosen and culturally superior. A literal performance of legitimacy. You watch as a noble approaches the throne. He bows not just a little bob, but a full sweeping bend that nearly puts his forehead to the floor. There's a particular way to do it, right? Knee bent, left hand, across the chest, eyes lowered, spine straight. Like a yoga move developed by fear and flattery. Historians still argue whether Mughal court rituals were influenced more by Persian or Indian traditions. You can see both. The robes, the poetry, the emphasis on honor, they're a blend tailored for an empire that stretched across languages, religions, and centuries. Now look over there. A man in emerald green robes fidgets at the edge of the crowd. He's new, probably a lower-tier official trying not to hyperventilate. His turban is slightly crooked. One of the guards glares at him. He immediately fixes it and adjusts his posture. You feel for the guy. The pressure to be perfect here is enough to wrinkle your soul. A eunuch glides by carrying a scroll the length of a carpet. He's announcing something important, possibly a royal decree or maybe the Emperor's new favorite mango variety. You can't tell. The words are sung more than spoken, each syllable reverberating through the chamber like a soft drum beat. The crowd listens, but only the Emperor reacts. His fingers tap the throne arm 3 times, that's all. And that's enough to change lives. Behind you, someone whispers a joke about a noble who accidentally sneezed while bowing and was never seen again. You chuckle quietly and then stop, just in case that noble is now a marble floor tile or something. Here's a quirky tidbit. Mughal courtiers were sometimes expected to wear scent sachets in their turbans, so they'd smell nice during formal gatherings. One prince allegedly fainted from the sheer strength of another noble's sandalwood blend. You imagine courtly Febreze wars and nearly burst out laughing. But it wasn't all awkward etiquette and flattery duels. The court was also a hub of debate, discussion, and surprising openness. Scholars from different religions and regions would gather to argue philosophy, astronomy, law. Shah Jahan, like his grandfather Akbar, encouraged a level of intellectual exchange that was honestly pretty progressive for the time. Of course, if your exchange involved disagreeing too passionately with the emperor, your next debate might be with the executioner. Still, for all its pomp, the court wasn't lifeless. It was vibrant, dynamic, and utterly theatrical. Everyone played a role: the poet, the skeptic, the flatterer, the observer. You start to see how the throne fit into this perfectly. It was the stage, the centerpiece, the spotlight. And Shah Jahan, he wasn't just sitting there. He was performing power every moment. A bell rings. Everyone freezes. It's time for the midday audience to end. The nobles retreat backward, never turning their backs to the emperor. Some bump into pillars. One nearly trips on his own robe but recovers with a pirouette that might win him style points. As the room empties, you remain, just for a moment. The throne glows a little less brightly now, the sunlight moving on. You let out a long breath. That wasn't just a court session. That was a symphony of ego, elegance, and exhaustion. You reach up and straighten your imaginary turban, because in here appearances matter even in dreams. You follow the flow of departing courtiers drifting down the corridor like a leaf in a velvet-scented stream. But you soon veer off, drawn by a peculiar sound, a trumpet low and mournful, followed by the unmistakable thump, thump, thump of something massive approaching. You step outside onto the marble terrace where the blinding daylight makes your eyes squint and your brain whisper, "You forgot your SPF 50 again, didn't you?" And there they are, elephants. Not just any elephants. Imperial elephants. The Mughal version of a sports car and a battleship combined. They're decked out in silk cloths embroidered with gold thread. Their tusks painted, their ankles adorned with bells that jingle with every thunderous step. Each one carries a noble or dignitary in a howdah, those extravagant seats that say, "I'm important enough to ride an animal that can crush your house." One elephant sneezes and 3 nearby servants scatter like pigeons. You try not to laugh. Good luck with that. Processions like this were a big deal in the Mughal court. They were half parade, half mobile flex. If the emperor was moving, everyone moved. And it wasn't just elephants, there were camels with cargo horses, with guards, dancers, drummers, flag bearers, falconers, and once allegedly a guy who juggled flaming swords while riding backwards. Historians still argue whether that last part is true or just an early Mughal TikTok story. You lean over the edge of the terrace watching the whole spectacle march through the palace gates. Somewhere in that golden chaos is the ceremonial umbrella, massive jewel-encrusted, and always held exactly 3 inches above the emperor's head, even if the sun is behind a cloud. Because decorum waits for no weather, but there's more to it than flair. These processions were critical tools of control. By showing off the sheer scale of imperial power, Shah Jahan kept his nobles awestruck and his people in line. The message was clear. You may have money, you may have land, but you do not have 30 elephants in coordinated outfits. There's an etiquette to elephant riding, too, in case you were wondering. Nobles had assigned animals. The higher your rank, the more lavish your elephant. Some even had special perfume spritzers built into the howdahs because heaven forbid you smell like an elephant while riding one. You step back as a man brushes past you, leading a group of younger nobles. He's explaining the bowing order, who bows first, how deep, how long, and which foot to slide back when dismounting. It's like a dance that, if you get wrong, results in political exile and mild public shaming. The emperor doesn't join this parade, at least not today. But his presence is felt in everything. His standard, with its golden sunburst and peacock motif, flutters above the procession. His musicians lead the way, playing tunes that signal imperial movement. Even the dogs that trot alongside the guards wear tiny golden collars. You shake your head. This is less a walk and more an opera on legs. Suddenly, a child's laugh cuts through the noise. You turn to see a little prince, probably one of Shah Jahan's younger sons, trying to feed sugarcane to a baby elephant. The elephant snatches it with its trunk and honks approvingly. The boy claps. Everyone within a 10-foot radius pretends not to watch, but absolutely is. Moments like this, little flickers of softness, remind you that this empire wasn't just about power and posturing. There were families here. Real lives full of joy. Heartbreak sibling squabbles over who got the fancier howdah. Even Shah Jahan, the jewel-obsessed emperor, had once been a young boy playing in palace gardens before being thrust onto the Peacock seat of destiny. You wander toward the stables less glamorous than the throne room, but buzzing with its own sort of majesty. Grooms polish elephant armor, repair saddles, and comb horse manes with more care than most of us give our own hair. One man is humming a tune from home, a melody that sounds suspiciously like the chorus of "Please Don't Kick Me, Majestic Beast." Here's a quirky nugget for you. Elephants weren't just parade props, they were also war machines. The Mughals outfitted them with armor weapons and sometimes tiny cannons. Yes, elephants with cannons. Who needs sleep now? And yet these creatures were also pampered. They had names, personalities, favorite snacks. One was known to fake injuries to avoid marching in the heat. Another was obsessed with mangoes and would sulk dramatically if he didn't get one. You admire the hustle. As the sun begins to sink behind the palace walls, the procession starts to wind down. The drums fade. The elephants vanish behind the gates bells, jingling softly like bedtime wind chimes for giants. You stay still, letting the silence settle over you like a velvet blanket. Because today you didn't just see a throne. You saw how that throne moves, breathes, parades. You saw the spectacle of rule, the circus of power, and maybe a baby elephant with better posture than most politicians. The echoes of jingling elephant bells still bounce softly around the marble courtyard. As you wander back indoors, your feet padding silently over a mosaic of blue and gold tiles. You're not sure where you're headed next until a delicious aroma curls through the air like a royal beckoning. You follow it instinctively like a cartoon character floating toward a pie on a windowsill. You find yourself in one of the palace kitchens. Well, a kitchen. There were many. Feeding a court of thousands didn't exactly require a microwave and a stack of paper plates. No, this is a full-blown operation. Smoke drifts gently from clay ovens. Pots the size of hot tubs bubble with saffron rice. And everywhere you look, cooks are bustling, shouting instructions, grinding spices, yelling at each other about cumin levels like their lives depend on it. They might. This, my friend, is a Mughal feast in the making. You duck as a tray of golden naan whooshes past your head. The chef carrying it doesn't even flinch clearly. He's done this 1,000 times. You follow him through a side passage into the banquet hall where a long, low table is being set with plates made of actual gold. Not gold-rimmed. Gold. You look down at your modern shirt and wonder if it's technically fabric or just sadness. By now, the food is arriving in waves. There's biryani studded with cloves and raisins. Skewered meat sizzling on silver trays. Sweet sherbets in bowls carved from crystal. The smell alone could hypnotize you. And the centerpiece, a goat roasted whole stuffed with rice dates, almonds, and at least 73 spices. Historians still argue whether it was ever actually eaten or just paraded around like a savory trophy. The emperor, of course, doesn't sit here. He dines in private, surrounded by trusted companions and his inner circle. But his influence touches every dish. Mughal cuisine was a fusion Persian richness, Indian spice, Central Asian technique. You're basically chewing your way through an edible history book if history books came in curry flavor. Fun fact. Shah Jahan had a notorious sweet tooth. His chefs once prepared over 50 types of desserts for a single banquet. One included rose petals boiled in milk, reduced for hours, and served in bowls of ice imported from the Himalayas. Yes, ice. In 17th century India, because when you're emperor, even your desserts defy physics. You sit cross-legged near the musicians at the edge of the room. A flute player is serenading the diners with something gentle and wandering. It feels like the musical equivalent of drowsiness. You could nap right here, except a plate of mango pickle just landed beside you and your curiosity overrides your sleepiness. The nobles eat slowly but with purpose. Conversation is hushed. No one dares slurp or cough too loudly. You watch one man delicately lift a single pomegranate seed to his lips as if it might explode. Another casually mentions a shipment of lapis lazuli arriving from Badakhshan, but you're pretty sure it's just a flex. There's a quiet drama playing out at the far end of the table. One noble accidentally takes a bite of a pepper-heavy dish and instantly regrets everything. He tries to maintain composure, but his ears turn red and his eyes start to leak. A servant discreetly hands him a sweet milk drink. Crisis averted. You make a mental note never underestimate Mughal chili. But here's where it gets interesting what happens after the feast. Digestive aids were a whole genre. There's payon beetle leaves with sweet fillings, rose-scented water, and even tiny spiced balls meant to keep the humors balanced, whatever that means. One fringe theory suggests the emperor's personal physician would examine his digestion by... Well, let's just say Shah Jahan's chamber pot had a fan club. Also, Mughal feasts had rules. Certain foods were only served on specific days, fish on Fridays, lentils on full moons, and sweets whenever someone made the emperor laugh. If you broke the pattern, someone would definitely write a poem about it, and not a nice one. You overhear a group of younger nobles discussing the emperor's current obsession with mangoes. Apparently, Shah Jahan believed the Alfonso mango to be a divine gift. One prince sent crates of them across the empire in hopes of winning favor. Another tried to clone a tree. Historians still argue whether any of this actually worked, or if Shah Jahan just liked messing with them. The room begins to empty now, stomachs full and egos slightly bruised. You spot a few courtiers slipping away with extra sweets hidden in their sleeves. Bold, respect. The musicians begin to play something slower, more melancholy. You lie back resting against a silk cushion. The scent of roasted spices still lingers in your clothes. Somewhere a servant is extinguishing oil lamps one by one. The room dims, but your thoughts stay lit. Because what you've just witnessed wasn't just a dinner. It was a political event, an artistic display, and a digestive marathon wrapped into one. The emperor's table wasn't just a place to eat, it was a battlefield of status, a throne of flavor, and, depending on the curry, a source of mild hallucinations. You close your eyes and let your mind drift. The flavors, the colors, the soft murmur of satisfied nobles. It all blends together into something warm and distant. And somewhere deep in the kitchens, a cook is already grinding spices for tomorrow's feast. Because in the Mughal Empire, the next banquet is always just a dream away. The scent of cloves and cardamom still clings to your sleeves as you drift quietly through a long corridor dimly lit by flickering oil lamps. A soft rustle catches your attention, a whisper of silk. The tap of anklets, the low murmur of laughter, too careful to echo. You've arrived at the Zenana, the women's quarters. And no, don't picture some Disney-fied harem fantasy full of chaise lounges and giggles. This is not that. The Zenana is a world within a world. Guarded, enclosed, powerful, political, quietly terrifying. You slip through a side entrance. Everything here feels softer, the lighting, the voices, even the air. It smells like jasmine rose water and maybe mischief. You pass through gauzy curtains into a room where women lounge on carpets, weaving garlands, sipping tamarind drinks, and sharing gossip that could reshape empires. These are no idle beauties. You're surrounded by the emperor's wives, daughters' consorts, and the handful of favored attendants who control more behind the scenes than most generals ever will. One woman, older, regal, sharp-eyed, sits near a window sorting through a stack of handwritten letters. She doesn't look up, but she's clearly listening to every word spoken in the room. A younger woman leans in, whispering something about a noble's daughter and an unauthorized poetry recital. You don't catch the details, but the reaction, arched eyebrows, and a sudden silence tells you everything. Scandal is currency here. The Zenana had its own hierarchy, customs, and factions. And while men weren't allowed to enter, they were often the subjects of intense debate, manipulation, and occasionally well-placed bribes. Historians still argue whether the Zenana was a prison or a palace. For some, it was a life of luxury and control. For others, it was confinement dressed in velvet. The truth, as always, is probably somewhere in between. You peek into a smaller chamber where girls are learning calligraphy. Their teacher, stern, elegant, taps one lightly on the wrist for smudging her ink. Another girl giggles, scribbling something mischievous in the corner of her parchment. You squint. Is that a poem about a palace guard with nice calves? Yep, you weren't supposed to see that. Here's something that doesn't make it into most history books. Mughal princesses were often highly educated. They wrote poetry, managed estates, even commissioned buildings. Shah Jahan's daughter, Jahanara Begum, was one of the most powerful women in the empire. She managed her father's affairs while he was imprisoned. She owned ships. She wrote memoirs. She was quite frankly a boss. One of the attendants passes you carrying a tiny embroidered cage. Inside, a green parrot? A talkative one? You lean in curious just as it squawks. Koh-i-Noor is missing. The room erupts in laughter. The parrot fluffs its feathers smugly. Someone throws it a pomegranate seed. You settle into a cushioned corner half hidden behind a sheer curtain. From here, the Zanana unfolds like a secret opera, soft singing quiet, scheming the gentle clink of jewelry and ambition. One woman is composing a letter to a provincial governor. Another is decoding a message likely from her brother who wants her help navigating a court scandal. You realize slowly that these aren't just women reacting to power, they are power. Just quieter about it. A servant enters carrying a tray of tiny mirrored dishes, each with a different cosmetic. Sandalwood paste, crushed pearls, something that smells faintly of saffron and revenge. One of the older women begins applying it with a small, deliberate brush. She glances at you, not unkindly, just amused. Like she knows you think you're watching history, but actually she's watching you. And it hits you. This room, this world operated by its own rules. Rules that men at court might never fully understand. Alliances are formed over hair braiding. Battles are won with rumors. A single glance across the Zanana could shift the outcome of a court appointment. Some fringe scholars even suggest that imperial decisions were sometimes softened in these very rooms before the emperor made them official. Was it pillow talk, emotional influence, or just strategic timing, historians still argue? But the truth lingers in the way these women carry themselves. They know things. And more importantly, they know how to use them. You rise tiptoe back toward the curtain and pause for one last look. The laughter has faded to murmurs. Someone hums an old lullaby in a corner. The parrot yawns. The windows are open, letting in the cool night breeze. Outside, the empire stretches for miles, but in here is the whispering heart of it all. You slip out and the curtain falls shut behind you. You're back in the hall, but the jasmine clings to your clothes and the sense of quiet power stays with you, like a secret tucked behind your ear. You leave the hush of the Zanana behind, only to step straight into chaos, the organized kind. You hear shouting, clanking, the stomp of hooves and the occasional "watch your feet," barked in Persian-accented Urdu. You've stumbled into the imperial prep zone for one of the strangest royal habits of the Mughal era, moving the entire court. With the throne. That's right. When the emperor traveled, he didn't just pack a suitcase. He packed the entire empire. The Peacock throne. That magnificent beast of gold and jewels. Yeah, it moved. Not every week, but often enough to warrant a dedicated logistical corps whose job was essentially move a priceless sofa through a desert. You squint as the throne disassembled and wrapped in silk. An oilcloth is slowly lowered onto a heavily reinforced cart. It takes 20 men. 2 of them are arguing over which jewel gets double padding. One guy just keeps yelling, "More cushions." He said more cushions. Travel in the Mughal Empire wasn't just movement. It was spectacle on the road. Entire tent cities popped up more extravagant than some palaces. Historians estimate the royal entourage could include upwards of 20,000 people. That's not a typo. 20,000. Soldiers, servants, scholars, cooks, dancers, elephant handlers, astrologers, parrot whisperers, you name it. You step outside the city gates and yep, there it is. A sprawling tent city blooming across the dusty plain, like a mirage with excellent embroidery. Enormous red and gold canopies ripple in the wind. Silk banners flap. Horses are being brushed to shine. Camels sulk dramatically in the sun. You're not sure whether to gawk or start passing out lemonade. At the center of it all, the travel throne platform. Not the full Peacock throne, but a kind of portable cousin still dripping with bling, but with fewer death-defying stairs. This is where the emperor will sit during the public audiences while en route. A golden couch on wheels, basically. With attitude. You watch workers drive stakes into the ground with ornate hammers. A line of eunuchs check the alignment of carpets leading from the emperor's quarters to the throne tent. One taps a rug 3 times, frowns, then adjusts it by an inch. You're impressed and slightly alarmed. Why all the fuss? Because movement was power. By traveling through the empire, the emperor showed up. He reminded distant provinces who was in charge displayed generosity and bling, and made sure no one got too comfortable with the idea of autonomy. Shah Jahan was a master of this. His imperial camping trips were part surveillance, part spa day, part Rolling Stones tour. But travel wasn't just for show. Wars were real. Conquests were constant. And the throne, even if symbolic, often came along. Some fringe theorists argue the emperor believed the throne physically anchored his rule like carrying a holy relic into battle. Others say it was just a really shiny security blanket. Historians still argue whether the throne had any actual military influence, or if it just made generals nervous when the boss showed up, sitting on 30 million rupees worth of decor. You stop to watch the imperial kitchen tents being set up. Smoke's already rising. One cook mutters something about how the onions in Gujarat are too sweet, and you realize that Mughal logistics weren't just about speed. They were about taste, atmosphere, and consistency. Even in the middle of nowhere, the empire had to feel like empire. Next to you, a boy struggles to lift a bundle of tent poles. His turban slips over one eye. An older man helps him, then swats him playfully with a peacock feather duster. You smile. Even among all this grandeur, there's still normalcy, frustration, mentorship, inside jokes, and sweat. You stroll toward the emperor's private tent. The guards let you pass because well-dreamed logic. Inside, the space is cooled by wetted curtains and scented with sandalwood. On one side, there's a writing table covered in scrolls. On the other, a rolled-up map of the empire stretches across the floor. Red pins mark fortresses. Blue ones mark cities. Gold ones, no idea. Probably places where the desserts were especially good. Nearby, a throne tent stands open. There it is again, the throne. Reassembled for public appearance. The peacock feathers catch the sun filtering through the silk ceiling. The jewels glow like embers. It looks slightly annoyed at being outdoors, but also smug, like it knows even the dust beneath it is richer than some kings. A man enters royal advisor by the look of his robe, and the fact that everyone around him just tensed up. He adjusts the canopy over the throne by exactly 1 palm's width. Satisfied, he walks away without a word. You exhale. As dusk settles, the tent city begins to glow. Lanterns are lit. Musicians strike up evening tunes. And from somewhere you hear the soft thump of a royal heartbeat, the peacock throne, whispering its presence through movement gold and unspoken messages. You lie on a silk rug outside the main tent, staring up at the fading light. Stars flicker to life one by one. The empire is on the move. And the throne, absurd as it is part of that migration, rattling over dirt roads escorted by warriors adored by crowds, feared by rivals. You close your eyes, and for just a moment you feel the vibrations of the wheels on stone. The road is long. The journey is ridiculous. But, oh, is it royal? The soft hum of the tent city fades behind you as time slips like it always does in these dream walks. And suddenly you're not in a golden tent in India anymore. You're in Delhi still, but it's 1739 now. A city thick with fear. Smoke curls on the horizon. You hear shouts, hooves metal against stone. The empire isn't marching, this time it's under siege. You walk quickly, people are running, screaming, and clutching their children and valuables. Guards sprint past you, their armor dented, their expressions blank. There's a tension in the air that feels like the moment before a rope snaps. Because it's finally happening. Someone came for the peacock throne. Enter Nader Shah, ruler of Persia. Walking tantrum in human form. He's clever, ruthless, paranoid, and completely fed up with the Mughal Empire's weakening grip. So what does he do? He invades. He storms Delhi. Fast, brutal, and terrifyingly efficient, his army overwhelms the city. And when the Mughals try to placate him with gold and jewels, he says in modern terms, "Cool, but where's the good stuff?" You duck behind a crumbling column as Nader Shah rides past, tall, scowling, wearing more steel than sense. His eyes scan the palace like a man checking real estate listings. When he sees the peacock throne for the first time, he actually laughs. It's not joy, it's disbelief. Like someone told him a myth and then he found it sitting right there on a dais waiting. You creep closer. The throne is still intact, still impossibly radiant. But it's surrounded by soldiers, each of them armed, and clearly under strict orders not to sneeze on it. Nader Shah walks slowly around it, nodding. Then, without ceremony, he points. And just like that, it's his. They begin dismantling it. It's a weird thing to watch. The world's most opulent symbol of empire being unbolted like an expensive IKEA shelf. Workers, probably terrified Mughal artisans, unscrew lion legs, peel gold sheets, cradle rubies like newborns. You feel sick. And yet, a tiny part of you can't look away. It's the morbid curiosity of seeing something that was never supposed to crumble. They load the pieces into wagons. Not just the throne jewels, manuscripts, tapestries, elephants, the works. Delhi is looted thoroughly. Nader Shah reportedly took so much treasure that he canceled taxes in Persia for 3 years. 3 years. Historians still argue whether that's exaggerated, but honestly it sounds about right. Some fringe theories suggest the throne fought back, that Nader Shah became erratic after seizing it. He turned on his own generals. His paranoia skyrocketed. Eventually he was assassinated. A throne-shaped curse, perhaps, or just the heavy price of hubris, you tell me. You walk beside one of the carts as the loot caravan leaves Delhi. The throne's components are bundled under layers of silk, guarded like sacred relics. It doesn't sparkle anymore, but somehow it feels even heavier now, like it knows it doesn't belong. You look back at the palace. Empty, broken, a husk of its former self. The empire that once dazzled the world with poetry mango feasts and 20,000-person road trips now watches its greatest symbol roll away like a prisoner. Here's a haunting detail. Nader Shah didn't just steal the throne, he stole the idea of ownership. From this moment on, the Peacock throne becomes a myth in motion. It changes hands, disappears, reappears, and eventually vanishes entirely. And Delhi, it never really recovers. The trauma of the sack lingers for generations. It's a turning point. A reminder that power, no matter how gilded, can be dragged away in a cart if you leave the wrong gates open. You sit on a chunk of broken wall, watching the dust settle. The empire, once so proud, now tastes its own mortality. And the throne? It's already halfway across the horizon, wobbling on squeaky wheels carried not by reverence, but by conquest. In the distance, someone begins sweeping the floor of the palace, a servant, loyal, maybe hopeful. You wonder what they think. If they believe the throne will return, if they even want it to. You exhale, the throne is gone, but its shadow. Still very much here. You're no longer on the dusty roads of Delhi. The carts, the smoke, the chaos, they've faded. Now the air is cooler, drier. You're in Tehran years after the infamous heist. Nader Shah is dead, cut down by his own men and the Peacock throne. Well, that's the thing, no one knows. You wander the halls of Golestan Palace looking for clues. Ornate? Yes. Impressive, definitely. But something's off. There's a throne here, shiny gold grand, but not that throne. Not the one with the fanned-out peacocks, the ruby lion paws, the cosmic swagger. This one looks like a cousin who went to a cheaper university. It's believed that Nader Shah's original Peacock throne was either dismantled for its jewels or destroyed outright. Some say it was melted down to prevent future theft. Others claim it was broken accidentally during his erratic final years, shattered by paranoia, or depending on who you ask, a particularly aggressive goat. Historians still argue whether any part of the original throne survived at all. Some point to the Sun Throne used by later Persian Shahs as a spiritual successor. It's certainly inspired by its similar motifs, similar lion imagery, but it's a copy. A very fancy, somewhat desperate copy. The original, it's either dust or somewhere you'd never expect. Fringe theories abound. One suggests pieces of the Peacock throne are hidden in family heirlooms across Iran. Another claims British agents smuggled the remnants out during the 19th century, mistaking a throne leg for a bizarre umbrella stand. My personal favorite, it's still buried under Golestan Palace, waiting for someone with enough guts and a shovel. You walk past displays of Persian weaponry, carpets, porcelain. All beautiful, all valuable, but they don't vibrate the way the Peacock throne did. That throne glowed with meaning. It wasn't just furniture, it was theater. No one ever whispered in awe over a side table. You pass by a curator, a young woman dusting a display case. You ask about the throne. She sighs, rolls her eyes, and points toward a faded oil painting. There it is again, the peacock throne rendered dramatically Peacock's mid-strut. Gems practically oozing from the canvas. Everyone asks, she says. No one finds. No. You sit for a moment. The painting's beautiful, but it's not enough. You want to hear the clink of sapphire against emerald? You want the shadow of those ridiculous golden columns to fall across your shoes. You want the original. But here's the tragic twist: it might never have existed quite the way we imagine it. Some historians believe the peacock throne we describe today, peacocks, gems, divine symbolism, lion legs and all, is a sort of collective hallucination, compiled from paintings, travelogues, court poetry, and a whole lot of imagination. A French jeweler described it one way. A Persian soldier described it another. Mughal sources often contradicted themselves. Over time, the myth outgrew the artifact. It became a story more than a seat, which, let's be honest, is weirdly poetic. You step outside into a small garden. The air smells of roses and cold iron. You think about how empires fall apart, not just through invasion, but through forgetting. The throne may have disappeared physically, but its memory, that's still doing laps through museums, textbooks, and internet rabbit holes. A peacock struts across the lawn. Real feathers this time. It stops, turns, and looks at you with the disinterested gaze of a bird who knows its ancestors were once artistic muses. It makes a strange honking sound. Not majestic, not royal, just bird. You chuckle. Back inside the palace, tourists snap photos of throne replicas. Some hold up their phones next to the painting, angling for the perfect selfie. You want to tell them you're posing with an idea, not a throne. But maybe that's the point. You begin to walk away, the sound of the peacock fading behind you. You don't know where the throne went. No one really does. But somehow its absence feels more powerful than its presence ever could. And maybe that's what makes it legendary. You blink, and now you're not in Iran anymore. You're in a wood-paneled study in London, surrounded by bookshelves, and the unmistakable smell of old leather pipe smoke, and barely concealed imperial smugness. The British have entered the chat. It's the 1800s now. The Mughal Empire. Basically a ghost, the peacock throne. A myth whispered about by colonial officers in gin-soaked salons. And the British, oh, they're obsessed. You pace past stacks of maps and dispatches all detailing India like it's a theme park waiting to be inventoried. Every British official seems to have a hobby stamp collecting butterfly pinning, and apparently hunting for missing thrones. You stop near a group of scholars who are having a rather heated argument over a sketch. It's labeled Reconstruction of the Peacock Throne, and it's about as accurate as a blindfolded llama trying to describe a spaceship. One guy's gesturing wildly, claiming the original throne had 8 peacocks, not 2. Another insists it was shaped like a lotus. A third just wants to know where the diamonds are. Same, honestly. And oh, the diamonds. Because while the throne itself may be lost, its jewels have definitely not disappeared. They just migrated. Casually. Quietly. Often through completely legal channels like conquest and coercion. Enter the Koh-i-Noor, the Mountain of Light. One of the largest diamonds ever recorded. It was once possibly part of the Peacock throne, though historians still argue whether it was the diamond in the throne's central sun motif or just one of its shinier entourage. Doesn't matter now. It's on the crown of Queen Elizabeth. You wander into the Tower of London. Cold, damp, smug. In the jewel house, people shuffle past display cases containing what might as well be the world's fanciest stolen goods. And there it is, the Koh-i-Noor, gleaming under glass, surrounded by a small army of velvet ropes and polite signs that don't say stolen, but definitely want to. British tour guides wax lyrical about the craftsmanship. A symbol of the empire, they say. You want to ask which empire, but the guard already looks nervous. There's something absurd about how the British handled Mughal treasures. They cataloged them like they were butterflies. Look at this ruby, they'd say. It's the size of a pigeon's brain. And then they'd slap it on a brooch and forget where they got it. You flip through an 1890s travelogue. One passage stands out. Had the throne survived, it would no doubt sit in our own Windsor Castle where such refinement belongs. You don't know whether to laugh, cry, or slap the book into a fire. Some fringe British scholars believed the throne still existed in secret, that Shah Jahan had hidden a replica, that Nader Shah had only taken a decoy, that somewhere in Rajasthan a forgotten vault held the real thing waiting for a descendant of the Mughals to reclaim it. It's a lovely idea. Also complete nonsense. Still, the obsession persisted. Victorian museums scrambled for anything remotely Mughal. A broken chair leg, possibly throne-related, a silver spoon, surely royal. One particularly hopeful curator once claimed a small marble tile was almost certainly part of the emperor's lavatory. Bold move. You sit in the reading room of the British Library. A bust of Queen Victoria stares blankly ahead as if daring you to complain. You wonder how many Mughal manuscripts sit in these archives catalogued by people who couldn't pronounce Aurangzeb. You gently open one. The ink is fading, but the poetry is unmistakable. If there is a paradise on earth, you close the book. Here's the thing: the British didn't just want to steal Mughal wealth. They wanted to possess its aura, its glamour, its mystique. That throne wasn't just a trophy, it was a brand. And colonialism, among its many sins, was a marketing campaign. You step outside. The London fog wraps around you like a damp curtain. Somewhere the bells of Westminster chime. You wonder what Shah Jahan would have thought of all this, his empire reduced to footnotes and fancy rocks and foreign hats. The British didn't get the Peacock throne, not really, but they got just enough of its sparkle to convince themselves they'd inherited the world. You smirk. You've walked through Delhi, Tehran, and now London, and somehow the throne feels more elusive than ever. Not because it's hidden, but because everyone who's ever chased it missed the point. By now, you've walked through war zones, royal kitchens, forgotten vaults, and foggy colonial museums. You're starting to think the Peacock throne may be less of a throne and more of a very elaborate hallucination. And then you walk into a room that proves it a museum gallery full of replicas. You're in India again. Delhi, a modern museum. Fluorescent lights hum above you. And there it is, not the Peacock throne, but a version of it. Rebuilt, reimagined, re-sparkled. At first glance, it's breathtaking. Gold gemstones. Okay, probably glass majestic peacocks fanning their tails like they're auditioning for a Royal shampoo commercial. You inch closer. Heart flickering, is this it? But no, it's a recreation one of many based on conflicting sketches, travel accounts, and a fair bit of creative guesswork. This version has 3 peacocks. Another replica in Tehran has 4. A third one made for a TV drama has only 2 and appears to have rhinestones hot glued to plywood. You shake your head. This throne has become the Elvis of furniture spotted everywhere, confirmed nowhere. A plaque reads, "Model of the Mughal Peacock Throne." Dimensions and ornamentation based on 17th and 18th century Persian accounts. Exact appearance unknown. You love the honesty. It's academic speak for, "We're guessing, bro." You sit on a bench across from the replica. It's weirdly emotional. This isn't the throne itself, and yet in this filtered light with a school group filing by, and a distant guide explaining how the Mughals liked their mangoes, it feels just a little bit real. What's even stranger is that these replicas have their own fandoms. Scholars debate over them like Star Wars nerds arguing about lightsaber colors. One museum insists their version is architecturally most plausible. Another claims they use gem placement analysis, which, let's be honest, sounds like something invented during a marketing meeting. There's even an online community dedicated to throne spotting matching pieces from various collections, analyzing gem cuts, trying to find continuity between museum inventories, auction listings, and dusty basement ledgers. The theory, maybe the throne was broken up and scattered, but the parts are still out there, like a mystical furniture-themed scavenger hunt. You flip through a museum booklet that proudly displays artistic reconstructions. Each artist has a different take. Some go minimalist, clean lines, tasteful gold leaf, elegant restraint. Others go full fever dream, jewel-encrusted everything dragons playing harps, probably fireworks. One version even adds a rotating base. That's not history. That's a Las Vegas hotel lobby. You can't help but laugh. But then again, maybe that's the point. The throne was always meant to overwhelm, to blur the line between fact and fantasy. Maybe its most authentic form isn't the original. Maybe it's all these imitations scattered and ridiculous. Each one a mirror of how we imagine power, beauty, and glory. You wander through another exhibit. Here's a throne from Nepal. There's one from the Rajputs, another from the Marathas. All stunning, all radically different. All reflecting the idea that thrones aren't just seats, they're stories. Carved, polished, gilded, worshipped, and eventually forgotten or misunderstood. You pause at a digital touchscreen labeled Design Your Own Mughal Throne. You grin. You tap a few options. Tiger legs emerald canopy cushion with memory foam. A glittery rendering appears. It's absurd. You love it. You name it the slightly sleepy Sultan seat. The screen thanks you for your submission and assures you your design will be considered by the court. You chuckle and walk away. The next room has something smaller, a replica footstool said to have been used with the throne. Not the throne, just the thing the emperor's foot rested on. It's simple, elegant, carved with a delicate lotus motif. No peacocks, no diamonds. Just wood-worn smooth over time. You find yourself staring at it longer than you expected. Because here's the truth no one wants to say out loud: the throne might be gone. But it left fingerprints. Not just on museums or manuscripts, but on how we think about power, about spectacle, about what it means to sit above others and say, "This is mine." You stand up slowly, one last glance at the replica. It's a little wobbly. One of the peacocks has a loose eye jewel. A kid sneezed on it 5 minutes ago. It's not perfect, and yet it shines, a little. You turn toward the exit. Behind you, tourists take selfies. A guide explains Shah Jahan's flair for the dramatic. Someone asks where the real throne is. The guide smiles and says, "Depends who you ask." You step into the sunlight. Somewhere a bird squawks. You smile. That might have been a peacock. The museum doors close behind you, but the throne lingers still perched in your thoughts, impossible to dislodge. You walk the streets of modern Delhi, horns, honking street vendors yelling in neon lights flickering beside old Mughal walls. And yet, despite the scooters and chai stalls, the peacock throne follows you like a shadow wearing gold sandals. Because now the throne isn't just history, it's everywhere. Billboards for TV dramas feature CGI versions of it, sparkling like disco balls. One show even turned it into a sentient object that whispers secrets to the emperor like a blinged-out version of Alexa. Another animated series shows Mughal emperors flying the throne into battle trailing fireworks and Urdu catchphrases. You try not to roll your eyes and fail. But the pop culture love doesn't stop there. In Bollywood, the throne has been reimagined in dozens of films. In some, it's a cursed object that ruins everyone who touches it. In others, it's a family heirloom stolen by evil British officers with very dramatic mustaches. There's a rom-com where the heroine sits on a replica throne at a wedding, and the groom has an existential crisis because he realizes he peaked too early. You laugh but quietly. Video games. Oh yes, you've got empire builders with digital versions of the throne you can unlock once you conquer half the known world. A mobile app lets you decorate your own digital peacock throne with in-game gems, although most players just give up and cover it in gold and googly eyes. The throne has become interactive furniture, and conspiracy forums naturally. You stumble into one where someone insists the peacock throne is actually buried under Buckingham Palace, guarded by descendants of the Mughal elite, now secretly integrated into the British aristocracy. Another swears it's on a private yacht owned by a billionaire who thought it was a novelty minibar. I saw it in Ibiza, he writes completely seriously. You back away slowly. But it's not just fringe theories and fandoms. The throne also lives in national identity. You notice it popping up in textbooks, on commemorative stamps, and school competitions. A little boy in a school play recites Shah Jahan's speech while perched on a cardboard throne draped in tinsel and sequins. He has a plastic sword and a look of pure imperial seriousness. You can't help but clap. Because at its core, the Peacock throne isn't just about luxury. It's about memory, the way a nation remembers itself. A reminder that once right here, emperors built dreams out of rubies and ruled with poetry and spectacle. That kind of memory doesn't fade. It mutates, sure. Sometimes into melodrama, sometimes into myth, but it stays. You stop by a bookshop thumbing through a glossy photo history of India. There it is again, the throne gleaming on the page. Next to it, a paragraph reads, "A symbol of opulence lost to time but never forgotten. A monument not of marble but of imagination." You grin. Not bad, bit over the top. But hey, it fits. You think about how we keep recreating the throne because deep down we want it to exist. We want to believe in a seat so beautiful, so absurdly magnificent, that it could anchor an entire empire. We want to believe that somewhere it's still waiting, polished, silent, dreaming of silk and incense. Or maybe, we just like shiny things. You walk past a souvenir shop. Inside, there's a tiny brass replica of the throne for sale about the size of your palm. It's not accurate. The peacocks look vaguely like chickens. The gems are plastic. But it sparkles a little under the light, and you think maybe this is enough. Maybe the throne's true power isn't in where it was, but in how it continues. In the stories we tell, the dramas we binge-watch, the textbooks we scribble, and the dreams we keep polishing like old gold. You step back into the street. The sun is setting over Delhi. Somewhere nearby, someone is arguing about history. Somewhere else, someone is filming a scene with a plastic crown and an extra in a fake beard shouting, "I am the empire." You smile, stepping over a crack in the sidewalk. The Peacock throne isn't gone. It just learned to adapt. The sun dips lower, casting long shadows that stretch across old Mughal walls and modern concrete. You keep walking, and with every step, the lines between past and present blurred like ink dropped into water. And now your next stop is not a palace, museum, or battlefield. It's your own browser history, because somehow the Peacock throne has made it to the internet. And not just in the expected places either. You stumble into YouTube rabbit holes with thumbnails screaming in all caps. Top 10 Lost Treasures 33 will shock you. Clickbait, absolutely, but you click, obviously. The video opens with dramatic music CGI gold and a British narrator declaring the Peacock throne treasurer, time travel device. You groan. He goes on to explain how the throne might be hidden beneath the Vatican, guarded by Illuminati lizard monks. You close the tab. Next up, Wikipedia. Surprisingly calm, surprisingly sane. A tidy list of facts, dates, and caveats. But as you scroll down, you see it, citation needed. A tiny reminder that even here in the land of hyperlinks and footnotes, the throne is still wrapped in, maybe. The information is out there, sure, but so is the speculation. And the Peacock throne. It thrives in that gap. You hop over to Reddit. There's a thread titled, "What's the real story behind the Peacock throne one?" User claims their great-great-uncle saw part of it in a secret chamber in Agra. Another insists it was melted and recast as the Queen Mother's umbrella handle. A third replies simply, "You fools." The throne was never real. It was a metaphor for ego. That gets 1.2k upvotes. You chuckle. In some strange way, Reddit might be closer to the truth than most textbooks. Then there's TikTok. Because, of course. You swipe through a series of 60-second micro-documentaries, each one offering a hot take with background lo-fi beats and text overlays like this throne was wild. One creator walks through Delhi pointing at historic spots with captions like, "Imagine Shah Jahan pulling up to court like." Another overlays Mughal art with K-pop choreography. It makes no sense. You love it anyway. This isn't just reinterpretation, it's reincarnation. Because if the original throne is gone, digital culture has resurrected it in pixels, likes, and reposts. The Peacock throne is now a meme, a mood board and aesthetic. Tumblr pages curate images of Mughal miniatures under the banner of Throne Core. Instagram influencers pose with velvet cushions and call it royal energy. And somewhere out there, a teenager in Idaho is writing fan fiction about a Mughal emperor, time traveling to Paris and buying the Louvre with one emerald from his chair. You pause and think, is this disrespect? Or is it the only way empires really live on? Historians might scoff. Purists might clutch their pearls. But cultures are like rivers, they flow where they want. The Peacock throne is now part of a global archive of dreams. It belongs to everyone and no one. It floats through algorithms as easily as it once sat in a marble hall. Here's a quirky tidbit for you. Someone recently tried to build a Minecraft replica of the Peacock throne using gold blocks and glowstone. It's blocky, it's weird, and it's oddly touching. The comment section filled with kids asking if they can use it in their empire builds. Go for it, the creator replied. It's just history. You shut your laptop and sit back. The glow of the screen fades, but your thoughts keep buzzing. You wonder if Shah Jahan could have imagined any of this. Probably not. But maybe in some corner of his gem-laced vision, he understood that the throne wasn't just about today. It was about forever, or at least whatever form forever takes. You grab your phone and scroll through an article titled, "Why Are We Still Obsessed with Thrones?" The author argues that thrones are just metaphors for authority, and that our fascination reveals how much we still yearn for structure, spectacle, and anyone to sit in the big chair and pretend to have answers. You think back to that gilded beast of a seat, the one made of peacocks and prophecy, and you realize it never really mattered whether the throne still exists. What matters is that it still reigns in stories, screens, sketches, sarcasm, and scrolls. The Peacock throne has been broken, rebuilt, forgotten, misquoted, misrepresented, idolized, and parodied, but never erased. Not bad for a chair. The night deepens around you now. Screens dim, crowds thin, and even Delhi's streets, usually immune to sleep, begin to quiet. You find yourself back in the Red Fort, walking alone through echoing corridors. Everything is still. Even the air holds its breath. You're thinking about everything you've seen. The gold, the myths, the elephants, the emojis. You've followed the Peacock throne through centuries across continents, from battlefield to browser tab. And suddenly your thoughts turn inward to the heart of it all. What's actually under your pillow? It sounds strange. Maybe a little poetic, maybe a little ridiculous. But the question lingers. What do you rest your head on at night? Is it a dream of power, of legacy? Or maybe quietly a throne of your own, made not of gold, but of want? Because, let's be honest, we all have a little Peacock throne in us. That part that wants to be admired. That part that wants to be remembered. That quietly thinks maybe if I sparkle hard enough, they won't notice the cracks. Shah Jahan had his literal throne. Nader Shah stole it. The British wanted a version to call their own. Modern media keeps building glittery replicas on every screen. And we scroll through all of it, hoping to find a little shine for ourselves. You pause under the archway of the Diwani-Khaj, the hall of private audiences. It's empty now, lit only by moonlight spilling across the stone floor like liquid silver. The inscription above your head whispers across the centuries. If there is a paradise on earth, it is this, it is this, it is this. You smile. Humble these emperors were not. But you get it. They weren't just building for now. They were building for forever. And forever, it turns out, is hard to hold on to. Thrones crack. Stones fade. Names are misspelled in textbooks. Power passes. Historians still argue whether Shah Jahan understood that even the most beautiful thing he ever built, the Taj Mahal, would outshine his own name. That the throne he spent a fortune on would disappear into history like a coin tossed into a well. Maybe he knew. Maybe he built anyway. You sit on the cool marble floor, eyes closing. And somewhere in that drifting moment between thought and dream, the Peacock throne flickers in your mind just for a second. Not as gold, not as glory, but as a feeling. A throne made of memory, of longing, of a world that once believed in the power of a chair to hold the weight of an entire empire. That's what you carry under your pillow. Not the jewels, not the lions, but the dream. A quiet belief that something grand, something impossible might still be waiting just around the next corner. Just beyond the next page, just beneath the silk of sleep. You smile again, slower this time. The Peacock throne isn't lost. You found it. It was never about the seat. It was always about the story. You don't rise just yet. Not quite. You let the stillness of the Diwan-i-Khas wrap around you like an embroidered shawl, soft, ancient, and heavy with echoes. The moonlight is gentler now, stretching longer shadows along the columns where once courtiers bowed, where once an emperor sat at the center of the universe, humming with authority and incense. But tonight it's just you, and what a walk it's been. Through halls of gold and spice across battlefields and broken dreams from the fingertips of craftsmen to the slippery grip of thieves. The Peacock throne, once towering, gleaming, untouchable now, lies in your memory like a completed puzzle. Not perfect. A few pieces might still be missing, but the shape is there. The idea endures. You take one last slow stroll through the royal court in your mind. Shah Jahan is still perched in his carved glory, his gaze stern and soft at once. Courtiers flanking him like petals around a center. Peacocks glittering behind him, forever frozen mid-display like the world's most arrogant wallpaper. You nod to him, just a dream visitor passing through, and yet you can't help but think. What if that throne really had power? Not magical power. Not the kind that blasts lightning bolts or summons armies, but something stranger, quieter, the power to make people believe. Believe in grandeur, in permanence. In the story of a man who built a tomb for his wife, a throne for his empire, and a legend for us all. You imagine the final jewels being laid. A craftsman with calloused fingers wiping sweat from his brow. A noble rehearsing his praise speech in the mirror. A servant polishing the lion's paw for the 5th time that morning because it just has to gleam. All of them part of something far bigger than themselves. Something absurd. Something beautiful. You sigh. The throne was never just about ruling. It was about spectacle, control, art, ego, hope. And in that way, it's not really gone at all. The symbols are still with us. Every time someone calls their desk a command center, every time a stage is built, every time a child drapes a towel over their shoulders, and declares themselves king or queen, that's the Peacock throne, whispering through time. You rise now in your dream from the stone floor. You dust off your thoughts. You nod one last time at the vanished court. Outside, the stars blink overhead like silent witnesses. The city hums in the distance. Life goes on. You've walked far tonight, so let's pause now. Let's let it all settle like dust on old velvet. Wind down 300 words. Now, just breathe. Let everything soften. Let the peacocks fold their jeweled tails. Let the dust of Delhi and the scent of saffron drift into the corners of your mind like candle smoke curling in still air. You've been walking a long, winding path through marble halls and memory. You followed the throne from its glittering beginnings to its mythic, meandering end. And you made it here intact. Sleepy, maybe, but whole. The Peacock throne. Once the proudest seat in the world was built to outlast time, to make men bow, to make the sun feel small. But tonight, it's just a story. A quiet shimmer in the background of your thoughts. A thing that once was, a thing that always will be in some form or another. So as your breath slows, as your limbs sink heavier into the mattress or sofa or floor beneath you, let the final sounds of that ancient court dissolve. Let the noise fade. Let the gems dim. Let the throne disappear gently into the folds of dream. And in its place a gentle silence, a calm space, your own throne of stillness. Because tonight you don't need gold to feel royal. You don't need rubies to matter. You're here. You made the journey. That's enough. Now close your eyes. Let the empire rest, and let sleep take the throne.